welcome to Solving Two-Step Equations. As you can recall from a previous podcast, we learned to solve simple one-step equations. During this podcast, you will learn how to take the addition principle and multiplication principle and put those two together to be able to solve two-step equations. I'd like to call your attention to these steps for solving an equation that I have put on the board already. I want to remind you that the goal of solving an equation is to get the variable by itself. And as a second reminder, the way we do this is through opposite operations. For example, the opposite of add is to subtract, the opposite of subtract is to add, and the opposite of multiply is to divide. The opposite of divide is to multiply, so those work forwards and backwards as opposites of each other. I would also like to remind you to pause this podcast as needed to take notes and to work out the examples as I go through those with you. Now I'd like you to leave steps 1 and 2 on your paper blank. Those steps will come later when we learn how to solve equations with a little more level of difficulty, the complex equations. So in solving equations, you would start with steps 1 and 2, and then you would move with steps 3 and 4. What I'd like to do today is focus just on those equations at level 3 and 4 of our sequential step process. So just as an example, if we have 3x plus 4 equals 13, we want to be able to solve this to get the variable by itself. And the way we do that is we ask ourselves, where is the variable and what is happening to the variable? In this example, I see that this x is my variable. I can also see that it's being added by 4 and multiplied by 3. And so I go to my step 3 and it says I should take care of or undo addition and subtraction first before I undo the multiplication and division. So I will use the addition principle to undo adding 4, and the opposite of adding 4 would be to subtract 4 from both sides. So remember, when solving equations, the idea to keep the equation balanced on both sides is that you subtract or add. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. You have to do it on both sides. So the 4's cancel, and this leaves us with 3x equals 13 minus 4, which happens to be 9. Step 4 then says I take care of or undo the multiplication or division left in the problem. I see that 3 is being multiplied by x. The opposite of multiply by 3 is to divide both sides by 3. And this gives us that x equals 3. Okay? Again, remember to pause the podcast as needed to work through the example, to make notes as we go through the problem so that you know later when you come back to your notes what it was that we did when we solved these problems. I've got one that I would like you to do on your own, and that is 16.3 subtract 7.2y equals negative 8.18. So I want you to write that down on your paper that you've been taking notes on, and take a few moments to try to work through it, remembering your opposite operations, and remembering to always undo addition and subtraction first as you work through the problem. Now I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer that you should get when you solve this problem. And that is y equals 3.4. So as a follow-up to this problem, when you work it out, if you do not get this answer, please call your teacher over and ask him or her what it was that you might have done wrong in this problem, or where you might have gone astray as you were working out the problem. You'll also have to recall for this problem, when you get to the end, how to divide a decimal by a decimal number and how to move that decimal so that your divisor is a whole number divisor. So these are two-step equations. Notice we were using both the addition principle and the multiplication principle and the opposite operations to solve those equations. And as always, if you have any questions, please ask your teacher. Thank you.